This may be one of those moments we look back on in history and go, that was the moment. It happened last night. Welcome to the National Briefing with me, Kelly Nash. And Donald Trump was addressing the media, talking, the 2028 Olympics, it's going to be amazing. And I have no doubt about it. Donald Trump will make sure that a lot of the federal resources, whether we're talking about security or other things, will make sure that the Olympic Stadium looks amazing in Los Angeles in 2028 and all of that. But in the middle of that press conference that he was having, he just kind of threw out a little side note, and I think it caught some people off guard.
I have to say that somebody from Doge was very badly hurt last night. You saw that. A young man who was beat up by a bunch of thugs in D.C. And either they're going to straighten their act out in the terms of government and in terms of protection, or we're going to have to federalize and run it the way it's supposed to be run.
All right. Now, Trump is talking about the individual that the world knows as Big Balls. Big Balls, 19-year-old Edward, is it Corsentine? Anyway, look, the kid is a fantastic individual. Everybody would probably want their son to grow up to be like Big Balls. Big Balls is so smart that he can get hired by Elon Musk to be a part of his inner circle. He is so brave that he's willing to, in this instance, Saturday night into Sunday morning. So it's early Sunday morning. He's wrapping up his Saturday evening date, and he is going back to his vehicle, and he sees a group of what's described as by police as about 10 youths are trying to carjack a young lady. What Big Balls did was put his girlfriend in his car, told her to lock the doors, and then he ran over there and got involved. And quite honestly, when you look at the photo, he got the living hell kicked out of him. We don't know who all these people were, what all their ages were. We know that two 15-year-olds were arrested, and but the others got away, according to the police. Now, he's got a concussion, a broken nose. The photo is, like I said, kind of nasty. He's got his shirt off. He's sitting on the ground, and he's covered in blood. Yeah, it's rough stuff. But great job, Big Balls. Now, because Big Balls is a high-profile figure, and again, I mean high-profile in the sense that he worked with Doge and Elon Musk, you couldn't pick this kid out if he was walking into your office right now unless he had a hat on that said, "I'm Big Balls." But he's a high-profile figure, and Donald Trump is very aware of so when something like this gets put out on social media or something, and then Trump draws attention to it, now the eyes of the nation turn to it. There's no way you would have heard about a carjacking in D.C. where 10 kids, young people, 15 to 18 years old or whatever, are trying to beat up a woman, because that happens literally every night in D.C. That is nothing new. D.C. is a violent cesspool, as are every major city in America. If you want to look at crime statistics, by the way, you have to be choosy, I guess, in the words that you put in order to get the right results. Because what the crime statistics, they always like to manipulate them. And so like Pueblo, Colorado, I think is the most violent place in America right now because they've had like 3 murders. So so when they start trying to break it down by per 100,000 or something like that, you're not looking at real data. When you start looking at the metros, and that's what you got, because D.C. is not even one of the 10 biggest cities. It's one of the biggest metros, but it's not one of the biggest cities. There's only 700,000 people that live in actually Washington, D.C. So there's like some, like little towns that are going to be, I wouldn't call them town, but, if you look like Fort Worth, Texas is bigger. Jacksonville, Florida is bigger than D.C. But anyway, when you get back to the metros and you start looking at the crime statistics, other than murder, Chicago is always going to lead the way in murder. And interestingly, they blame it on Indiana's what they call lax gun rules, that the people of Indiana are selling gangbangers weapons who are then coming back to Illinois because they have some of the strictest gun laws in all of Illinois. But it's because of Indiana that they have the murder. Now, why isn't it that like in Atlanta, which has also what we would call lax gun laws, why isn't it that Atlanta has murders like that? Nobody has murders like Chicago. Nobody. Matter of fact, last year, let me just go look at this real quick. Chicago had 620 murders last year. Second place, halfway, Philadelphia had 330. So literally half the violence as Chicago. But anyway, bigger story. Donald Trump floating the idea of federalizing D.C. This might be breaking news to you. That's the way it was run until 1973. So this is nothing new. In 1973, Congress voted to allow D.C. to kind of, I think it's called the self-rule law. That's when they set up the mayor and all that sort of stuff. And if you go to WJLA television, they had a guy who's not happy, the council chair for D.C., of course, because he'd be out of a job if Donald Trump and the Congress decided to take it over. But listen to his specific complaint.
And D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelssohn is also responding, calling the president's comments unfortunate, saying in part, quote, if the president truly wants to run the district and the federal government doesn't have a good track record, it would require legislation by Congress and establishing a whole new government and transferring roughly $20 billion of responsibilities and programming.
If Phil doesn't think that the federal government can figure out how to spend $20 billion, he doesn't know them very well. But I do appreciate Phil's critique of the federal government. They don't have a good track record of running things. They don't. That's why we usually say, get it to the local authorities, let the local people run it. However, in D.C., like just about every major city, run by Democrats, it's insanity. And the difference between that and, say, San Francisco or Detroit or Baltimore or insert other major, Democrat-run hellhole is that in D.C., it's the nation's capital. It is supposed to be representative of the United States of America. And if we've got like 1 out of every 20 tourists being mugged, we can't have that in D.C. We have to fix it up. So, Phil, get it in order. Now, the mayor of D.C., I thought she had an interesting comment here.
The mayor saying she's been trying to work with the president.
I work with them like more than I've worked with any president. I think our approach to working with the president has been a good one, to focus on our shared priorities, which we have.
Well, isn't that great? By the way, the only other president she would have worked with would have been Joe Biden. Obviously, you can't work with Joe Biden. He was in a coma. But I like the fact that she's not slamming the president, government overreach and blah, 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 authoritarianism. That's going to be the headlines today. Donald Trump and his authoritarian move is trying to, federalize Washington, D.C. Just so you know, he doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to be in control of D.C. He just wants D.C. to be better. It's kind of like, I really believe Donald Trump did not want to be the president. If you look at those old interviews of him, he's like, I got a great life. Why would I want to deal with this? But I will go and do it if I have to. And thank God he came to the conclusion that he had to, because he is making America, and he may end up making D.C. great again.